Acid. A chemical, usually a liquid, that contains hydrogen and has a pH of less than 7. The hydrogen can be replaced by a metal to form a salt. Acids usually have a bitter sharp taste and can often burn holes in or damage things they touch. For example, the acid burned a hole in her coat.
Aggressive.
Aggressive. Angry, and behaving in a threatening way, ready to attack. For example, seals have been known to exhibit aggressive behavior toward swimmers.
Aid. Money, food, etc. that is sent to help countries in difficult situations. For example, humanitarian/food/medical aid. Air. The mixture of gases that surrounds the earth and that we breathe. For example, let's go out for some fresh air.
Alcohol.
Alcohol. Drinks such as beer, wine, etc. that can make people drunk. For example, he never drinks alcohol.
Alternative.
Alternative. That can be used instead of something else. For example, the road was closed, so we had to find an alternative route.
Analogy.
Analogy. A comparison of one thing with another thing that has similar features, a feature that is similar. For example, analogy between A and B.
Animal. A creature that is not a bird, a fish, a reptile, an insect or a human. For example, the animals and birds of South America.
Anybody.
Anybody. Used instead of somebody in negative sentences and in questions after if whether, and after verbs such as prevent, forbid, avoid, etc. For example, is there anybody who can help me?
Anyone. Used instead of someone in negative sentences and in questions after if you whether, and after verbs such as prevent, forbid, avoid, etc. For example, is anyone there?
Anything. Used instead of something in negative sentences and in questions, after if whether, and after verbs such as prevent, ban, avoid, etc. For example, would you like anything else?
Anywhere. Used in negative sentences and in questions instead of somewhere. For example, I can't see it anywhere. Anywhere. Used in negative sentences and in questions instead of somewhere. For example, I can't see it anywhere.
Appetite. Physical desire for food. For example, he suffered from headaches and loss of appetite. Arena. A place with a flat open area in the middle and seats around it where people can watch sports and entertainment. For example, a concert at Wembley Arena.
Aspect.
Aspect. A particular part or feature of a situation, an idea, a problem, etc., a way in which it may be considered. For example, aspect of something.
Attribute.
Attribute. A quality or feature of somebody/something. For example, patience is one of the most important attributes in a teacher.
Bag. A container made of cloth, leather, plastic or paper, used to carry things in, especially when shopping or traveling. For example, he was carrying a heavy bag of groceries. Bake. To cook food in an oven without extra fat or liquid, to be cooked in this way. For example, bake something.
Balance.
Balance. A situation in which different things exist in equal, correct, or good amounts. For example, this newspaper maintains a good balance in its presentation of different opinions.
Banana.
Banana. A long curved fruit with a thick yellow skin and that is soft inside, which grows on trees in hot countries. For example, a bunch of bananas.
Bar. A place where you can buy and drink alcoholic and other drinks. For example, we arranged to meet in a bar called the Flamingo.
Bargain. A thing bought for less than the usual price. For example, I picked up a few good bargains in the sale. Bean. A seed or pod containing seeds of a climbing plant eaten as a vegetable. There are several types of bean, and the plants that they grow on are also called beans. For example, green beans. Beef. Meat that comes from a cow. For example, roast beef.
Beer. An alcoholic drink made from malt with hops added to give it taste. There are many types of beer. For example, a pint/can/bottle of beer.
Bench. A long seat for 2 or more people, usually made of wood. For example, a park bench.
Beneath.
Beneath. In or to a lower position than somebody is something, under somebody is something. For example, they found the body buried beneath a pile of leaves.
Best. The most excellent thing or person. For example, we all want the best for our children.
Bird. A creature that is covered with feathers and has 2 wings and 2 legs. Most birds can fly. For example, a bird's nest with 2 eggs in it.
Bitter.
Bitter. Having a strong, unpleasant taste, not sweet. For example, black coffee leaves a bitter taste in the mouth.
Boil. When a liquid boils or when you boil it, it is heated to the point where it forms bubbles and turns to steam or vapor. For example, the water was bubbling and boiling away.
Booking.
Booking. An arrangement that you make in advance to buy a ticket to travel somewhere, go to the theater, etc. For example, a booking form/hall/clerk.
Bowl. A deep round dish with a wide open top, used especially for holding food or liquid. For example, a salad of fruit sugar bowl.
Bread.
Bread. A type of food made from flour, water and usually yeast mixed together and baked. For example, a loaf, a slice, a piece of bread.
Break. A short period of time when you stop what you are doing and rest, eat, etc. For example, she was on her lunch break. Breakfast. The first meal of the day. For example, they were having breakfast when I arrived.
Breast. Either of the 2 round soft parts at the front of a woman's body that produce milk when she has had a baby. For example, she put the baby to her breast. Breath. The air that you take into your lungs and send out again. For example, his breath smelt of garlic.
Breathing.
Breathing. The action of taking air into the lungs and sending it out again. For example, her breathing became steady and she fell asleep.
Brown. Having the color of earth or coffee. For example, brown eyes hair. Brown. Having the color of earth or coffee. For example, brown eyes hair.
Burn. An injury or a mark caused by fire, heat or acid. For example, to have minor/severe/3rd degree burns. Burn. An injury or a mark caused by fire, heat or acid. For example, to have minor/severe/third-degree burns.
Butter.
Butter. A soft yellow food made from cream, used in cooking and for spreading on bread. For example, fry the onions in butter.
Café. A place where you can buy drinks and simple meals. Alcohol is not usually served in British or American cafes. For example, there are small shops and pavement cafes around every corner.
Cake. A sweet food made from a mixture of flour, eggs, butter, sugar, etc. that is baked in an oven. Cakes are made in various shapes and sizes and are often decorated, for example with cream or icing. For example, a piece/slice of cake. Can. A metal container in which food and drink is sold. For example, can of something.
Cancer.
Cancer. A serious disease in which growths of cells, also called cancers, form in the body and kill normal body cells. The disease often causes death. For example, breast/lung cancer.
Carrot.
Carrot. A long-pointed orange root vegetable. For example, grated carrot.
Category. A group of people or things with particular features in common. For example, these are the nominees from each category. Cater. To provide food and drinks for a social event. For example, British English.
Cattle.
Cattle. Cows and bulls that are kept as farm animals for their milk or meat. For example, a herd of cattle.
Characteristic. A typical feature or quality that something/somebody has. For example, there were few similarities in the brothers' physical characteristics.
Cheat.
Cheat. A person who cheats, especially in a game. For example, you little cheat.
Cheat.
Cheat. A person who cheats, especially in a game. For example, you little cheat.
Chef. A person whose job is to cook, especially the most senior person in a restaurant, hotel, etc. For example, a new book by celebrity chef Jamie Oliver.
Chicken.
Chicken. A large bird that is often kept for its eggs or meat. For example, they keep chickens in the backyard.
Chocolate.
Chocolate. A hard brown sweet food made from cocoa beans, used in cooking to add taste to cakes, etc. or eaten as a sweet. For example, a chocolate bar.
Classify.
Classify. To arrange something in groups according to features that they have in common. For example, the books in the library are classified according to subject.